It's a known fact that whenever an animated movie is given a live action treatment, that movie ends up becoming really horrible really fast. And that can be said for just about every single live action movie that's based off of an animated film. The only ones that I can think of that are actually pretty better than the original animated movie are the two Jungle Book movies that we got from a few years ago. The one from 2016 made by Disney and the Mowgli spinoff from Netflix and Warner Bros. In 2018, I think. Anyway, both of those were fantastic, I thought. I thought the CGI in the 2016 Disney movie was beyond fantastic. The visuals in that were amazing. And I thought that the acting in it was pretty spot on too. And it actually did something that I don't think I've seen a lot of in a lot of movies, is it changed the way how the story ended. In the original cartoon, Mowgli stayed in the man village, and that was kind of the last that we ever saw of him. Whereas in this 2016 remake, he didn't. He stayed with Baloo and Bagheera, which I thought was awesome. And the fact that they even gave Shere Khan like a scratched out eye, that was fantastic. And I think it was probably just the best overall CGI live action remake. And the same thing can be said for the Mowgli movie. It's not even based off the cartoon, it's based off the book. And the book is from like the 1800s, I think, or something like that. But what happens in the Mowgli spinoff, that's not what happens in the cartoon or the live action remake. And another thing too is that this movie's dark. It's really dark. In one scene, first of all, I should explain that Mowgli is friends with this albino wolf pup, and at one point he treats him very badly, and then this pup, he wanders off by himself, and eventually Mowgli meets this hunter guy in the man village, and then one night he sneaks into the hunter's tent, and he's going in there with a torch and everything, or a lantern, I can't remember what, but he's going in there, and he sees the albino wolf's head on a trophy case or something like that. But basically, he sees the head of his best friend. That was so sick. And the emotion that you see Mowgli have, you couldn't pull that off with Disney. There's no way. So I found that to be really cool. The only nitpick I could have about the Mowgli movie was that the CGI, it didn't really look good. I think because the CGI for the Disney version was like so realistic that they couldn't really do that for this version. So they ended up using like motion capture, because at one point you could tell that Baloo, who is played by Andy Serkis, you can see Andy Serkis's face, kind of in the same way how if you look at Caesar from Planet of the Apes, you can see Andy Serkis's head. I almost said Andy Caesar. But my point that I'm trying to make here is that with the exception of those two movies, basically any live action movie that's based off of an animated film is dog shit. And I'm saying all of this because we just got a huge announcement from DreamWorks. In the form of a trailer, we just got our very first look, and I could not be more excited about this because it's been one of my favorite movies as a kid. We are getting the live action treatment for the new How to Train Your Dragon. I couldn't be happier about this. I've been reading about this ever since, I started reading posts about it last year. The idea of having a live action How to Train Your Dragon, that idea sounds so dumb, but so cool at the same time. And they pulled it off. I really think they pulled it off with this trailer. I'm worried about this movie, and at the same time I'm not, because I know for a fact that this movie will not be as good as the original one from 2010. I just know it won't. I saw that movie as a kid like 10 times in the theater. That's how much I loved it back then, which it remains to this day the most watched movie I've ever seen in the movie theater. This movie has a lot to live up to, and I think they pulled it off already with Toothless's design. I was so worried when they were making Toothless because I was thinking, how are they going to make Toothless so iconic as he was in the cartoon? How are they going to make him look appealing in this new one? And I have to say, this movie really kind of reminds me of Detective Pikachu. That movie was basically, you had real life Pokemon that looked exactly the same as they did in the cartoon, but with just like, 3D rendering, and they looked real to an extent. And with this, it's basically the same, which I love it for that. Toothless, he looks the same as he does in the cartoon. It's like they just took him from the cartoon and then just put him there in the movie. I know that may bother a lot of people. It doesn't bother me, because the way how Toothless is designed, you can't get any better than that. And I was really worried that they were going to butcher his design, because I know none of you will remember this, but there was this thing in 2012 called the Arena Spectacular, which was basically like a How to Train Your Dragon play. I saw it with my mom when she was battling cancer. Luckily, she survived, if any of you guys are knowing that, like 12 years strong or something like that. Anyway, so back to what I was saying. We saw it back then, and the way how the dragons were designed, they looked so goddamn awful. Toothless in the play, you could tell he was supposed to be toothless, but you knew deep down that this just does not look good at all. I was really worried that they were going to butcher his design, making him look like that, but they didn't. They actually just took the perfect design, which is from 2010, and just gave it a live action treatment, and I love it for that. That, I think, is, you just can't get any better. There's like AI images of like Toothless with like horns, like actual dragon horns, or with like a sharp, narrow mouth. It just doesn't get better than the original. You just can't get better. Oh, the lights just flickered. We're in a windstorm right now. That doesn't necessarily help the making of this video. But anyway, so what am I worried about with this movie? Well, I know, and everyone else knows, that this movie will not be as good as the cartoon. Sadly, it just won't. Unless they somehow pull off like some random plot twist in this movie, like maybe they might kill off Stoic in this. That's another thing too. I couldn't recognize Gerard Butler because he's back playing Stoic, mostly because of the fact that I've only ever seen Gerard Butler with like dark hair, and I have to remember that Stoic in the movie was a Nordic Viking, so he was a redhead. I couldn't recognize Gerard Butler at all for that. I recognized his voice, but not the way how he looked. But anyway, so basically, it's hard to say with this movie because it just, got revealed. But the way how I can sum it up is that it will be a good film. I know it will be. And I'm hoping that they won't flop with this movie. And I'm not worried about it flopping, because I know it won't. Because DreamWorks has been on an absolute win streak over the last year and a half now. I think it started with like The Bad Guys or something like that. I think that was like 2020. I don't remember when it came out. But basically, ever since they came out with that, and then the Puss in Boots movie, the second one, and then the most recent one that I watched was The Wild Robot. That movie was absolutely fantastic. The Wild Robot, in my opinion, is up there with Transformers 1. I've sung praise about Transformers 1 in the past few videos I've made, and my opinion still stands. I think it is without a doubt the best Transformers movie ever. And in terms of like animated movies, both The Wild Robot and Transformers 1 are easily, in terms of like, at least for this year, the best ever in this year. So I know that DreamWorks will not mess this up. They will not mess up this new How to Train Your Dragon remake. Like, I know that everyone's getting sick and tired of, remakes and everything, but frankly, this is a DreamWorks remake, not a Disney remake. Like, we're getting the new Mufasa movie, which does look good, I'll see that too, but we've never had a live-action DreamWorks movie remake, and I love that. I think DreamWorks should do more of that. I mean, okay, I know that this might be kind of a bit overstretched, but imagine a live-action Shrek. That would be weird, but at least it's there. Again, another comparison for How to Train Your Dragon. Both of those had god-awful plays. Both of them stunk. So, that was about the closest we ever got to having a live-action Shrek, was in that musical or whatever. But my point still stands, is that I think DreamWorks should do more of this. Yes, they're remakes of stories we've already seen and read and have been told, but they're in a way nostalgic for us as kids who grew up with those movies. Now as adults, we can see that in a more realistic picture. So I understand that maybe live action movies, or live action remakes, I should say, they're a little bit overhated because they're stories of stories that have been told before. The only exception being the new Mufasa movie, because that's a story that has never been told in animated format. We've never seen a prequel to Mufasa's story. So that will be exciting because that's the first time I think we've ever seen a live action remake prequel of a live action remake of an animated film that has never been told. So that is a genius idea. So I'm not one to root for Disney, but that's a genius idea. And I think DreamWorks should be doing more of that kind of stuff. They need to make more of their movie remakes, because I think it would be a really cool idea. Yeah, some of them might not be as good, but I have a really good feeling about How to Train Your Dragon, because the first one slapped. I'm saying this as I'm recalling the Lion King remake, which looked good, but the acting was shit. It was absolute shit. And I know for a fact that the acting in this movie won't be as good as the first one. It just won't. I just know it won't. Because from the views from the trailers, it looked like it sounded like Gerard Butler kind of downgraded a little bit. Maybe it's just because he's getting older. It's been 15 years. Everyone ages. Father Time and everything. But I can tell that there will be something off about this movie. I just can't describe what. I know for a fact it won't be the CGI and it won't be the story, because both of those were, told perfectly and seen perfectly in the cartoon. So I know that the story will be roughly the same as the cartoon's version, and the CGI is just fantastic. It's shot in IMAX, so, that just shows why Toothless looks so good. I just wanted to talk about all this because I am psyched for one of my all-time childhood favorite movies is finally getting a live-action treatment, and it's not a Disney movie. I'm so psyched for that. But yeah, and the lights are flickering. Oh god, there they go. Okay, well, I'm gonna wrap this up. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching.